Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are taking a trip. I want you to imagine you are wearing your heaviest parka, maybe clutching a hot cocoa, because we are transporting ourselves to the snowy peaks of Davos, Switzerland. It is Monday, January 26, 2026.
The air is thin up there, and usually the atmosphere is, pretty stiff.
Exactly. We are talking about the World Economic Forum. Now, usually this is the place where the global elite meet to politely clap for each other, shake hands, and discuss vague concepts like sustainability.
In very hushed tones.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is usually very scripted, very safe, and frankly, a little boring. But this year...
This year was something else. I don't think boring is a word anyone is using to describe what just happened.
That is putting it mildly. The atmosphere was electric, maybe a little tense. We are digging into President Trump's address to the forum delivered just yesterday.
Right, in the second year of his second term.
And looking at the stack of research we have, the full transcripts, the live blogs from CNBC, the analysis from the Wall Street Journal, this wasn't just a speech. It felt like a restructuring of the world order.
It really did. Typically, these speeches are about soft power, influence, diplomacy. This speech was all about hard power and hard assets.
Yeah.
We went from economic victory laps to literally discussing buying the world's largest island to build a missile shield.
It is wild. So here is our mission today. We are going to unpack this speech for you. We want to strip away the political rhetoric, the cheering, the booing, and just look at the actual mechanics.
What's the policy? What are the economic implications?
Exactly, for you, the listener. Because between the Golden Dome, the nuclear renaissance, and this new housing ban, there is a completely new playbook being written.
And we really need to read the fine print here, because whether you love the politics or hate them, the economic signals in this address are, well, they're impossible to ignore. They're going to affect your mortgage, your credit card, and the price of energy.
So let's set the scene. Davos, Switzerland. The president is on stage. Who is in the room?
Everyone who matters in global finance. Heads of state, Fortune 500 CEOs, central bankers, and, as the president jokingly called them, a few enemies. And he starts his speech not with a handshake, but by looking them in the eye and essentially saying, "I told you so."
The economic miracle, that was the phrase.
Right, that's the term he used. He came out swinging with data. And we have to look at these numbers objectively because, regardless of your political leaning, they are massive figures. He reported fourth quarter growth at 5.4%.
Which, for a developed economy like the U.S., is huge. Usually you're happy with 2 or 3%.
Well, absolutely. 5.4% sounds more like a developing nation that's just industrializing.
Just emerging market speed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here is the kicker, and this is what had the economists in the room taking notes furiously. Usually when you have growth that fast, you get inflation. The economy overheats.
Right.
But he stated that core inflation has dropped to 1.6%.
So high growth, low inflation, that is the economic holy grail.
It is the Goldilocks scenario. Not too hot, not too cold.
Yeah.
And he used this to draw a very sharp contrast with the previous years. He used a word that economists dread, and he pinned it on the past. Stagflation.
Okay, let's pause on that word. Stagflation. We hear it thrown around, but for the person commuting to work right now, what does that actually feel like?
It feels like a trap. It's a mix of stagnation and inflation. It just means the economy isn't growing, so businesses aren't hiring, you probably aren't getting a raise, but prices for gas, bread, rent, they're all still going up.
So your money buys less and you have no way to earn more.
It is the worst of both worlds.
Right. It's like running on a treadmill that is slowly tilting upwards. You are working just as hard, but going backward.
You are. And the president's argument is that his policies, the deregulation, the tariff strategies, snap the U.S. out of that trap.
He's framing this as a boom.
Correct. And to back that up, he dropped a number that made the room go quiet. He claimed to have secured commitments for $18 trillion in new investment.
18 trillion with a T.
With a T. He even suggested it could hit 20 trillion soon. He frames this as capital that was just sitting on the sidelines or overseas, flooding back into the U.S. to build factories and tech hubs.
Because of the tax incentives he's implemented.
That's the argument.
Speaking of incentives, this is where the speech took a turn that I think will impact regular people the most. He pivoted from macroeconomics to something very personal, housing.
The populist pivot.
Yeah, and he didn't just talk about interest rates. He declared war on a specific type of home buyer.
He announced an executive order effectively banning institutional investors from buying single-family homes.
Okay, let's define that. Institutional investor. We aren't talking about a guy buying a second property to rent out.
No. We're talking about the massive Wall Street firms, BlackRock, Vanguard, you name it, entities that buy homes by the thousands.
What's the threshold?
The specific threshold he mentioned was entities buying 500 or more homes.
And what is the logic for the ban? Why kick them out of the market?
The argument is that they distort the market because the playing field isn't level, and it comes down to the tax code. Trump pointed out a specific discrepancy: depreciation.
Right. Explain that to me. How does depreciation help a massive corporation buy a house?
So if you buy a house to live in, it's a home. You pay your mortgage, you pay taxes, you hope the value goes up. Simple.
Sure.
But if a corporation buys a house as a rental asset, the tax code treats it like a factory machine. They can claim that the house is wearing out over time, depreciating, and they can deduct that theoretical loss from their tax bill.
Even if the house is actually going up in value?
Exactly. That is the loophole. The market value rises, but for tax purposes, they claim it is losing value.
Yeah.
So they get a tax shield that you, as a regular family, do not get.
So he's saying this gives them a massive financial advantage. They can outbid you, drive up prices.
And turn America into what he called a nation of renters.
So the policy is strip that advantage, ban the bulk buying, and force that inventory back to individuals.
It's a classic populist move. It angers Wall Street, for sure, but it plays incredibly well with voters who feel locked out of the housing market.
It sends a message. I am choosing families over funds.
It absolutely does.
But if that made Wall Street nervous, the next part must have given them a heart attack. Credit cards.
Oh, the bankers in the room definitely stiffened up at this part. You could almost hear the collective gasp.
He is calling for a cap on credit card interest rates.
A temporary cap. He is asking Congress to cap rates at 10% for 1 year.
10%. Wow. I mean, I checked my statement the other day. I think I'm seeing, what, 24%, maybe 25%? A cap at 10% is a massive slash.
It is. The president cited rates as high as 28% to 30%, calling it usury. He's framing this as a kind of Jubilee-style relief measure, giving the working class a year of breathing room.
To pay down principal instead of just drowning in interest.
That's the idea.
That sounds great for the consumer, obviously, but we have to look at the flip side. We saw immediate reaction from the banking sector. What did Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan Chase say?
He did. And he was not happy. Dimon warned that this would be an economic disaster.
Why? If rates go down, isn't that good?
Not if the credit disappears. The bank's argument is just simple risk management. Unsecured debt, like a credit card, is risky.
Sure.
If a bank can only charge 10%, they simply won't lend to anyone with a credit score below, say, 750. The risk isn't worth the reward.
So Dimon is saying that instead of getting cheap credit, the working class will get no credit.
They'll be cut off from the financial system. That's the fear.
So it's a tug of war. The president wants to force relief. The market threatens to contract.
It's a direct challenge to the banking lobby coming from a Republican president. It just shows how much the party alignment has shifted.
Absolutely. Now, let's shift gears. We cannot talk about the economy or the future without talking about energy. And the phrase drill, baby, drill seems to have evolved.
Yes. The context has completely changed. In 2016 or 2024, the argument for oil and gas was about what you pay at the pump.
Right. Getting gas under $2.
And he mentioned that, sure. But the primary driver for his energy policy in this speech was one thing: artificial intelligence.
This was the story about Mark Zuckerberg, right?
Yes. Trump shared an anecdote about a meeting with Zuckerberg. Apparently, Zuckerberg showed him the plans for a new AI data center infrastructure. The president described it as being the size of Manhattan.
That was a terrifyingly large computer.
It illustrates the sheer scale of the energy demand. AI isn't just code, it's electricity. Massive amounts of it.
And his argument is that the U.S. is in a race with China for AI dominance.
And to win that race, we need baseload power that never turns off.
And this is where he took a sledgehammer to renewable energy.
He did. He repeatedly referred to wind and solar as the green new scam. He called wind turbines bird killers and money losers.
His point being you can't run a Manhattan-sized AI brain on wind power that stops when the breeze dies down.
He argues it is physically impossible to meet the demand with renewables.
So if wind is out, what is in, besides oil and gas?
Nuclear. This is the nuclear renaissance. He explicitly stated he is fast-tracking approvals for new nuclear reactors, specifically to power these data centers.
It's interesting how energy policy has become national security policy.
Precisely. Reliability is now a weapon. If you have the power, you win the AI race. If you don't, you lose.
Speaking of weapons and strategy, we have to talk about the elephant, or maybe the mammoth in the room, the part of the speech that made headlines everywhere. Greenland?
The geopolitical blockbuster. This is the moment everyone was waiting for.
I feel like every time this comes up, people think it's a joke or a meme. But listening to this speech, he is dead serious. Are we actually buying an island?
It has moved way beyond a meme. It's now policy. And the sources we have show just how aggressive this negotiation was. This wasn't a polite inquiry.
What was the timeline? How did we get here?
So, leading up to the summit, Trump had threatened to impose massive tariffs, 10% to 25% on 8 European nations starting February 1st.
That's next week.
Right. There's an imminent threat. Sell us the island or we crash your export economy.
Oh!
That was the leverage.
Wow.
But during the speech and in the interviews with CNBC afterward, the president announced that the tariffs were off.
Why?
Because he and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte had reached a framework or a concept of a deal.
A concept of a deal. That sounds vague, but clearly significant enough to stop a trade war. But why? Why does the U.S. want Greenland so badly?
There are two main reasons, and he laid them out very clearly. The first is strategic geography. Look at a map. Greenland sits right in the GI-UK gap. Greenland and Iceland, UK. It sits between the U.S., Russia, and China's polar routes.
It's the ultimate high ground.
It is. In an age of hypersonic missiles, owning that territory is critical for the Western Hemisphere.
And he was pretty dismissive of Denmark.
Very. He essentially said, Denmark can't defend it. We protected it in World War II. We should have kept it then.
He views it as a security liability.
Under current ownership, yes. And the second reason, this is where it gets sci-fi.
The Golden Dome.
The Golden Dome.
It sounds like a James Bond movie. What is it?
Is the name he's giving to a proposed state-of-the-art missile defense shield. He wants to build a massive military installation on Greenland to house the sensors and interceptors.
To create a shield for the entire North American continent, the U.S. and Canada.
That's the vision.
So it's not just about rare earth minerals. People always mention the lithium and uranium under the ice.
He mentioned the minerals, sure. But he was emphatic that the primary driver is this security architecture. He wants to make North America impenetrable.
So let's trace the logic. He used the threat of tariffs on BMWs and French wine to force Europe to agree to a framework for the U.S. to take over security of Greenland to build a giant missile shield.
That is the play. It's transactional diplomacy at its peak. And here's the crazy part. It worked, or at least the market thinks it worked.
Right. We have the CNBC market recap here. What happened when the news broke?
The Dow and S&P 500 surged over 1% immediately.
Wait, the stock market went up because we might buy an Arctic island.
No, the stock market went up because the tariffs were canceled. Wall Street doesn't care who owns Greenland. They care that trade flows aren't being disrupted next week.
They were terrified of a trade war with Europe.
Exactly. When Trump announced the framework, that threat evaporated and the markets rallied.
That is such a cynical, fascinating reaction. You can buy the island, just don't tax my car imports.
Money hates uncertainty.
Now, Greenland wasn't the only international hotspot mentioned. He touched on Ukraine, Venezuela, and the Middle East. Let's look at Ukraine. The language there seemed darker than usual.
It was very grim. He called the war a bloodbath and cited hundreds of thousands of casualties. But the takeaway here is his positioning. He's no longer talking about victory in the traditional sense.
He's talking about stopping the killing.
Right. And he claims to be mediating. He stated he is actively talking with both President Zelensky and President Putin, admitted there is tremendous hatred between them, but insisted that both sides want a deal.
So a shift toward freezing the conflict.
It seems so.
And then there was Venezuela. This one really surprised me. I thought we were at odds with Venezuela.
This is another example of that transactional pragmatism. The president revealed that the U.S. is now accepting shipments of Venezuelan oil, 50 million barrels of it.
So we are buying their oil.
We are processing it, selling it, and splitting the revenue with them.
We are business partners with Venezuela.
In the energy sector, effectively, yes. Trump acknowledged the country went bad with its ideology, but he argued this deal helps stabilize global oil prices. It's a purely economic move.
Divorcing money from ideology.
Completely. And finally, on the Middle East, he was very brief but bold. Claimed peace is imminent, referencing a deal where Hamas disarms. He attributed this to peace through strength.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground here. Let's try to zoom out. If you had to summarize the key pillars of this Davos playbook, what are they?
I think it boils down to 4 distinct pillars. First, the economy. It's a victory lap on growth, used to justify these populist interventions against Wall Street on housing and credit cards.
Right.
Second, energy. The pivot is absolute. It is all about the AI race now. The environment is secondary to computing power. It's oil, gas, and nuclear.
And a complete rejection of wind.
A complete rejection. Third, Greenland. This is the new strategic frontier. We are seeing tariffs used as a weapon, not just for trade, but for, well, territorial acquisition. The goal is the Golden Dome.
Okay. And fourth?
And fourth, the markets. They are resilient but reactive. They cheered the end of the tariff threat, but we shouldn't ignore one little data point in the report. Gold hit a record high of $4,800.
That's interesting. Stocks are up, but gold is up too.
Usually gold is the fear gauge. People buy it when they worried the system might break. The fact that gold is at $4,800 suggests that while everyone is happy the tariffs are gone, there's a deep underlying anxiety about where this new world order is actually heading.
It really is a unique mix. You have aggressive negotiation, populist economics, and sci-fi military ambitions.
The old rule book has been thrown into the fireplace.
As we wrap up, is there one final thought or detail that stuck with you, something the listener should be thinking about?
There is. It's a moment that happened when he was discussing the Golden Dome.
Go on.
So he explains that this missile shield on Greenland will protect the United States and Canada. But then he paused and explicitly called out the Canadian Prime Minister. He said Canada should be grateful because, and I quote, Canada lives because of the United States.
Ouch. That is direct.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
And it raises a fundamental question for the world in 2026. We are in an era of transactional diplomacy. Security is a product. Alliances are deals.
So if you are a traditional ally, like Canada or Germany or Japan, you have to be wondering,
What is the invoice going to look like next month?
that is a heavy question. Is protection a right of alliance or a service you pay for? It seems we are finding out the answer in real time. Well, that is all the time we have for today's deep dive into the 2026 Davos address. We hope this helped you cut through the noise and understand the signals.